And welcome to another episode of By the Numbers, the first proper episode of 2022. And it's going to be relatively brief by our standards, our incredible bloated Christmassy standards, because I've got to do one because I promised I would be on It's Server Time with Maui Snake and Note immediately after this. So we'll probably raid and go over there when I leave in approximately 2 hours or so. So tune in for that. Obviously, just before we get into the show, shout out to the sponsors. Of course, our VPN sponsor, NordVPN. Go to nordvpn.com/RLS to get 74% off. And of course, our hardware sponsor, our peripheral sponsor, SteelSeries, which you can just type ! SteelSeries. Type in Richard, go to the store, type in Richard Lewis, all one word, 10% off anything. Great to have those sponsors on board. So anyway, Duncan, it is 2022. New Year's resolutions.
I don't do them. I'm guessing you don't either.
Well, I am. I'm doing one this year. It's all a load of bollocks. But obviously, you see, what happens is I have the holidays period for reflection, catching up with friends, family, all of that stuff. Obviously, if you're religious, that too, generally. Then obviously you have New Year and you've got all that percolating in your brain. And then I segue into my birthday. So I've had my 39th birthday, always the 39th birthday. And, you know, as you start staring into that existential, you know, wormhole, you start thinking about things. So I've decided that in, you know, my New Year's resolution, I'm gonna actually act my age a bit more. That's the resolution. I'm gonna grow up a little bit, I think. Okay. Concentrate on hard work, content, clean living. Just go all in on business, and just, you know, these will be the final yards of the long marathon of my esports career. And, you know, maybe even get that book finished. So, yeah, I'm feeling very reflective. I'm going to be more forgiving as well. I'm going to embrace some of the old Christ-like behavior and start turning the other cheek rather than dunking on people. There's no punchline coming. I'm really going to do it. Yeah.
The problem is, though, which point in Jesus' life are we talking about? Because the same Jesus that was turning the other cheek was turning them motherfucking desks over when those FedEx 4X motherfuckers were going wild, weren't they? They were all wilding. They were all doing the fucking payday loans. In came Jesus, he started fucking wrecking shop. It was like fucking falling down or something. Classic movie reference. Except this was actually real. Oh, just ruined the whole movie there. Whatever. You don't need to watch it.
Yeah, for me, well, we'll see. I'm sure I'll have to flip over a table or two. But I'm going to try and attain.
I do actually, now you've made me think about it. Look, I'm not going to reveal the total thing because I'm not a fan of saying things and then you might not do it and then you're full of shit. You know, I tend to just do them and then I tell people after the fact. I do have a similar sort of mindset though, which is like this. One thing I did notice over my career that I made a mistake with is I do all my battles on Twitter. And the reason why that is garbage is, A, nobody can interpret any of the emotional intent behind what you say. Therefore, by the way, it almost necessitates bad faith takes that might genuinely just be their brain didn't interpret it reasonably. Sometimes not even truly bad faith. So there's that. It doesn't work for a start off. And then secondly, I actually think the transitory nature of Twitter works at this point asymmetrically against me. As in, if someone fucks with me on Twitter, that will get referenced forever. But mate, the amount of sins of people in this industry that no one even remembers because you'd have to find an archived tweet. So what I'm going to do from now on is, because in my videos I already appear like a much more reasonable person. Spoiler, it's the medium, you dumb fucks. But they'll never get it, Richard. I understand they'll never understand it. I understand they'll keep saying stupid stuff to us like, I wish you were like the one in the videos. But when I'm on Twitter, you're like the guy on Twitter. I can't even comprehend or handle that. By the way, how do you imagine you fans are coming off on Twitter? Do you wonder why? In person, we would all give you an autograph and a picture, but on Twitter we block you immediately. It's almost like there's a medium going on here that's affected. It's almost like some old fucking reamed out Canadian guy who said something about the message being the medium or something. Not Jordan Peterson, the only one that you know. But anyway, reel that back. So my point is this. One thing I have been thinking I should do is this. I need it with my battles from now on. I can't be having these like long sieges, right? I'm fantastic at them, but they don't ultimately work, right? Especially because people just come in at different stages of the siege, so they don't really know.
There's a permanent amount of relief coming for the, you know,
it's part of the problem. Army, there's an unlimited amount of them. So what I need to do instead is I'm just going to nail everyone in videos. That's it. It's just going to be a video on my channel. I'm just going to use evidence to show what the person did. I'm going to give some of my thoughts. I'm not even going to be that aggressive necessarily with it. I'm just going to show that they're pieces of shit. And we'll just have a record there forever on my YouTube channel. And so listen, like in this scenario, it's like the Nicola Nyholm story. I can't really stop them like badmouthing me to other people. But what I can do is make sure all the legit people have a go-to hot button, press this video, and you will find find out all the shit about this person. So I'm just going to do that from now on, mate. Essentially, I'm just going to finish all these fucking wars. Because after some of these videos, there wouldn't even be any point engaging in a further skirmish anyway. You've won the war at that point.
Also, another thing you should start doing is instead, because this is big, instead of typing what you want to say, I think, record and do like a little video clip on your Twitter and put it out like that.
Yeah.
You know, for example, the now legendary I am esports quote. Had you said that while high and recorded that, it would just be a funny video.
That'd be a good thing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right? So just saying, you know, like hold this LPGL, that was a legendary moment. Wouldn't have gone over so well in text, would it? It would have looked like you'd morphed into a Zoomer. So I think that's your medium, video. Yeah, you're right. You've identified it. So yeah, New Year's resolutions all round. Now look, we'll just start by getting into the news. I hope Brazilian CS players can get some New Year's resolutions together, because holy fucking shit, it's just history repeating itself over at 0-0 Nation. Wow, what a fucking mess that is. Let's just start with this, because I know you were buckled when this was happened again. There was talk about them rebuilding the roster with coldzera joining, and Malbs MD was going over there, and that KNG was the guy that was going to go out. And this was revealed because in a fan group chat, KNG's mother-in-law said that he'd left the team and that the team was dead without him. It's like,
I know.
Just like, listen, you've got to, your boomer parents cannot keep doing this, Brazil. It's got to stop.
One's actually worse for that reason, though, Richard. Listen, I actually sort of can get why your actual mother, especially if they're on the internet anyway, might make a comment if they think they're defending you, or in this case, you know, they like what I think they were doing with the infamous coldzera, like, you know, coldzera's family request that you do not do this or whatever, like that fucking legendary meme from when he was in FaZe Clan. Like in that scenario, though, I at least get that is his actual mother. This is the key words here are in law. What the fuck? So now whoever he's married to, their family's just having... I think what you're going like, what? Is this like a whole family affair? Or what is this? What is this fucking scenario? Why is this just taken as like, it's perfectly reasonable that his mother-in-law would have an opinion about this team? Like, what?
I don't... No, what's mad about this being the vector of like how the information got out is like, obviously, you know, in the coldzera instance where it was like, please, Mrs. coldzera begs you, don't leave Nico or whatever, you know, that's you'd sort of expect. I've always thought, honestly, because, you know, been around the business a long time, back in the day, if your parents were kind of interested in esports at all, I always thought that was kind of cool, actually.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because like in general, you know, back when I was a manager, you know, one of the big things I had to do when we were recruiting people into the team was basically convince the parents that, no, it's a totally safe environment. No, I'm not just some creepy weirdo, you know, on the internet. Although, yes, there are plenty of them, but don't worry. This esports is legit and your child is very talented and can have a bright future. And you had to do a lot of, like, essentially proselytizing that esports was a real thing and not to be afraid of it. But anyway, look, the idea that your mother-in-law is sort of a vector for this information leaking out, I can't quite tell if I think this is like cool or not. What I will say is it is sort of mega awkward because, as you say, it's not even a direct family member. I'm sure you love your in-laws. That's a notorious thing. Everyone loves their in-laws. But yeah, it just seems like such a weird way for it to come out. And obviously the fact that she was so in, fair play to her, in KNG's corner. The team is dead without, like, there was just scorched fucking earth.
Oh, she's a ride or die for sure. Yeah, exactly.
And obviously, KNG's then got to kind of go out there and do the whole media thing. Like, well, thank you for my time. And, you know, it's just so ridiculous that it even got to this stage. But yeah, so this is the news, of course, as well, that follows into coldzera joining 0-0 Nation. And I've got to say, I don't know what I think of the current iteration of the team. Technically, we haven't had full confirmation of KNG leaving or what's happening next. But coldzera is on the books. And for me, I don't know. When coldzera sort of like left FaZe, went to Complexity, left Complexity, not his fault, that just project imploded. And he was saying he had loads of offers. I was kind of excited for what happened next. I thought maybe he might go to NA or something like that. You know, maybe he works his way into Liquid, so Liquid do all of the washed-up Brazilian pros. But for him to end up on 0-0 Nation, a project that's currently ranked something like number 100 in the world, and honestly looks good for that. They are fucking terrible. I know it's kind of like he was the one coming out saying, I'm not doing The Last Dance because it would be a waste of my time, and that's in the past. Well, what the fuck is this,
dude? Yeah, exactly. It's like that's what's so puzzling about it is when he said that, coupled with that story when he joined Complexity, that even the other teams he had offers from. Remember, the whole reason some of the other teams said no is because he wanted a deal like Complexity where he had like a short-term gig, and it's like, you know, but if anyone actually good offers, then obviously I'll just fuck you guys right off and I'll leave instantly, right? Like that was the sort of mad, right? The idea that a guy who's that picky about who he's playing with in say 6 months from now then goes, actually, you know what? Why not just all in the rest of my career on this team that can't win a fucking game? Like, what? Like, because the weird thing about it is, of all the look, like the Mads guy would have been good if he joined. So, like, yeah, there's some players that are good out there in the business. Genji himself at one point was good, obviously, if you go a couple of years. But the problem is, it's like, coldzera, where's your career at, mate? Like, you're not in any of those big European teams, so there's the best teams done. Obviously, CIS is off the table because you can't speak Russian. So all it leaves you with, mate, is the Americas. It either has to be, let's be real, you had to join like Team Liquid or make a new Complexity or something like that, right? Or he had to be in Furia. That's it. The option isn't go to like make another like tier 2 South like Brazilian team. Where's the upside to that? Like what I don't get is where he thinks he is like a year from now if he joins this product. To me, it almost seems like this is the last fumes. It's depressing.
Yeah, I mean, look, and you've sort of hit the nail on the head there. It's like, you know, there must have been other options like for him. I mean, you know, I don't think he lied when he said that. So the question becomes, why on earth?
He's held in high regard among a lot of pros. I will say he's another one where I would guess a lot of them want to play with him. Yeah.
So it's like, why on earth would this be, you know, the sort of final destination? Now it kind of gets interesting because on the one hand, like we don't even know who they're likely to have in the team. It seems to me that Malbs MD, who, by the way, I think if he joined, he'd probably be the best team on the roster.
Mega, yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, he's currently over at Team 1. I think he tweeted out after the reports came out, I think he tweeted, I stay, which, you know, obviously there's the
overtly referenced like a motherfucker.
Yeah, which is fine. But also as well, they've been quite heavily linked with the Argentinian player Try.
Yes.
So it's sort of like 0-0 Nation had this kind of like Brazilian DNA, and now they're like looking to deviate from it. And by the way, both of those players look like legitimate prospects coming out of the kind of Latin America region, but none of that's confirmed yet. So there is a real prospect that, like, you know, coldzera's just playing with, you know, like TRK and VSM and like real talk. I was excited about VSM coming back after all of that, you know, drama. In reality, though, like, you know, he's played well, but only as well as the team itself has played. And none of these players look like they can carry this team to anything more than it is right now. And I think getting like kind of a washed up coldzera at the end of his career at like 27, 28 years old, I don't know. It just kind of feels like the project's unambitious if they don't get these young guns, and coldzera's unambitious for kind of wanting to go there over maybe trying to get something further up the food chain, assuming this was his deliberate first choice.
By the way, I'll just take this moment to just point out my old mate KNG. I said years ago in a video after the whole Immortals and 100 Thieves debacle where he basically tanked 2 different teams. Like, what's so tragic is this guy's probably blown his last ever chance. The joke is he got multiple chances. He got MIBR. Now, obviously, he had this new MIBR that he was the leader of and everything. Like, this guy has to be one of the worst players in the history of Counter-Strike for managing his own career. It's absurd. Like, you know, when people usually say he's his own worst enemy, what they really mean by that is just like, you know, things could have been better. This guy for real was his own worst enemy. Like, if you had to say, coldzera, what would be the best possible way to fuck your career? It's all the shit he did to himself and his teams. Like, no one actually did any of this stuff to him. That's the craziest part. I'm trying to think through any of the problems he's had where, like, there was no option as to what you could do. No, every time he chose the worst option pretty much. And this last one is mental because if people don't get it, He is the one behind the fucking no plan or fucking dog shit. He's the one who, like, the joke is in MIBR, some of the others didn't like the offers, etc. But at least some of them were sort of like, oh, but maybe if it went up a bit. He was so delusional. He thought he could get like his old salary, like some like the money for like, you know, the Fallen Coldzera's of the world were getting. He was a delusional character. So the idea that not only did he only just get the bloody org for this team like 3 or 4 months ago or something, but now he's not even in the team. He's kicked from his own fucking project. This is so stupid. They even, by the way, in MIBR, you dumb fuck, would have literally rebuilt the squad just around you. You were the piece. So, like, I look at his career, mate, and I ask that as well. Is it, like, we can do the Coldzera side. Isn't this just the end for KNG? Like, as far as I can tell, if they don't want him in this team, he just goes to, like, you know, some even smaller team, and we sort of don't hear from him again, except when there's an RMR or something in South America.
Yeah, unfortunately for KNG, like putting talent aside, the one thing he never really built up, like all the other players did, was he never really built up his brand to the same level as them. Yes. And the reason for that is because they had personalities, sure, they had quirks, sure, but they also had excellence, and they also picked their projects and made things work when it was tough. You don't think Fallen and Coldzera had a ropey 2 years at the end, but they were still relevant. They were still, you know, close to the top of their game, and of course, one of the greatest teams of all time when they were at their peak, and also discoverers of talent, and, you know, they had so much about them, and it's no wonder that some people from that lineup were like streaming the other night. You know, I know it's called The Last Dance still, but Last Dance for who? It's not even a relevant lineup. But, you know, 62,000 people tuned in just to watch them fucking practice together. And, you know, if KNG fucking turns on his stream, you know, and practices with some people, you think he's getting 62,000 people? No, obviously not. And it's crazy because he could have been that guy. Yeah. He had the passion, he had the talent. Unfortunately, he made so many bad decisions, starting back to when he came out of Red Reserve and ended up on that Immortals lineup. That whole Immortals 100 Thieves, fucking up the entire major, fucking up their entire legacy. That move is one of the all-time worst. It's like, you know, Ents and Alexi B levels of just ridiculousness, how to kill a successful team. And then he was in that, what was it, Now Tem...
Oh, yeah, like NTC or whatever, yeah.
They were in that for a bit. And then, obviously, that didn't work. That didn't take off, and he ended up playing for INTZ. And then, obviously, we had the failed MIBR project after that. And when I say failed MIBR project, remember, this was a team that was turning up to international tournaments, losing handily, going out in like last place repeatedly every time, mouse sports syndrome as it's known, and he in the end got benched, and then they said, no, we're actually going to leave, we're not going to take the 10 grand a month or whatever it is. That's a derisory amount for players of our talent and our stature, and then basically created O Plano, the plan, and then they ended up having to create some stupid shit brand, 00 Nation, which I believe is a conglomerate of 2 orgs, basically pooling their funds, and they have just been mega unsuccessful ever since. So basically, since 2017, KNG has self-sabotaged every chance he's got. And it's not just about shitty tweets or things he said. Like, I know you've even publicly said this repeatedly, but I will reiterate it. Even though he popped off at Duncan, said some homophobic stuff to Duncan, said some, you know, stuff about me, threatened people, all of this. Like, I totally forgive him for all of that stuff. It's hard being in the fucking spotlight. You even contacted him and said, delete these tweets for me because motherfuckers don't play about this shit now. And unfortunately, he wouldn't do it. He was too stubborn. So it's very hard to feel sympathetic for him. Because, like, unlike some other talent, Brazilian talent, other talent across, you know, the scene, people eventually either got their shit together, a la Simple, right? Or it was somebody else fucking them. They weren't getting the chances they deserved after they turned over the new leaf. KNG never turned over a new leaf, and it's completely remorseless, and it's still, like, never apologized for all the fucked up shit he did, which, by the way, has set off just a seismic, you know, just a cataclysmic effect on the whole of Brazilian CS, not just his own career, by the way, other people's careers. So, I don't know, man. Like, I don't see where he ends up now. He's probably going to go back to a Brazilian team, playing the Brazilian domestic league, probably smurfing on people in that until he hits 31, and then he's going to retire, and it's just a sad story. Basically, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the all-time biggest wastes of talent we've ever had in CS.
Oh, for sure. He just reminds me of that fucking meme everyone always uses, that like GIF that you can look up on Twitter, where it's like that Tyra Banks one, where she's like, "We were all pulling for you." That's what the last few years have been like. Like, everyone wanted this to be an awesome comeback story because he's a fucking talented player. It's just, again, he is his own worst enemy in every regard. He doesn't get it. It's actually depressing. It's like one of those stories where it's like, again, because this is the other problem. This isn't an 18-year-old kid who fucked up once or twice. Like, this guy, like, he looks like he could put 10 years of bad decisions and never apologise. And by the way, since I've learned recently, Richard, as if the standard for us doesn't get any more unrealistic, even though we're told every day of our lives, we have no professional standards, we're not even good at our jobs, all we do is trash talk people. We're also held to a standard that would normally be reserved for, like, the royal family of the United Kingdom or something, Richard. Because I learned recently,
the upside,
if one of us even misremembers a detail, that's actually an outright express lie, and we must be raked over the coals. So at the risk of Richard being dragged over the coals, because people might go, technically, Richard, he did apologise. He didn't. That apology, as I revealed on this show, was written by someone else. He just essentially put like KNG at the bottom, and then they just sent it in because that's the only way. I mean, even fucking MIBR understood this. That's the only way you could bring that guy back to essentially the org that he caused all the problems for and killed Counter-Strike for.
He never apologised to FNS still, and said he never would. Oh. Said he would die before he did that. So I mean, you know, fair enough, I guess. But yeah, just sad. And for me, you know, I hope 0-0 Nation can be, if either or both of those players, Malbs MD and Try, do join, I hope it can be a vehicle for success for those guys, because they're very exciting talents. The sad reality is, I think, because it will still be a core Brazilian team with big Brazilian names that have big Brazilian followings, I think you'll see kind of like history repeating itself, where the non-Brazilians could get scapegoated a little bit if the team doesn't work out, especially obviously Try. You know, I think he's ready. He's another prospect that looks so good in tier 2. He's definitely ready for a chance at tier 1, if you can call 0-0 Nation that, which you can't really. But yeah, it's just, when you look at, like, for example, if you contrast 0-0 Nation to Godsent, I think Godsent have done way better, the most improved team in World Counter-Strike, and I think they've done it with, like, worse personnel on paper, sure, yeah. and that's down to the leadership of Taco. So, you know, it shows how far KNG fell, that he couldn't even be the experienced old head to guide very talented players to something, you know, approximate to glory. So, yeah, the whole thing just stinks. Now, I mentioned mousesports there while I was giving my summary. Lots of activity over in mousesports of late, so I'll try and summarize it all. So the first thing you had was they promoted their Hungarian player from their very good NXT Academy side, a player called Torzi. If you've been watching any of the We Play Academy League or just any of the Academy games in general, you'll know mousesports have one of the best Academy teams in the world. In fact, you know, we were saying a few episodes ago, probably if this main lineup can't get the shit together, I would go and promote some of those people from the NXT team, because they can't do any worse. Like, mousesports are literally the worst team at every tournament they attend. It's just been like that now for so long. And remember, Dexter's had over a year with this team, so either you got to give him new tools or you got to get a new IGL that can make the ones that they've got work. But anyway, Torzi basically means Acor has no future on the roster anymore. So that was the initial move. Then, and this really surprised me, NXT picked up MHL, the Polish player. Now, MHL was being touted, potentially linked with teams like Liquid in this roster mania season. I think I did hear that. Certainly he was linked with some moves to American teams. Seems to be very highly rated, and so it seems to me, I'd probably be inclined to say, actually, MHL's the better player out of him and Torzi. Not to be disrespectful to Torzi, and Torzi has slightly better stats, but Torzi's been playing against slightly worse opposition, so maybe it's negligible. But for me, MHL's the one that's kind of got that reputation among other pros and everything. So to see him signed by mousesports and then put into the Academy team, that is very weird. And then, of course, the big story around Mouse was that NBK essentially comes out of exile where he's been, where fair play to him, he didn't fully commit to Valorant, never fully announced his retirement from CS, and MBK joins this roster to kind of flesh it out. So I've got to get your thoughts on all of this activity, starting with the Torzy move and obviously MHL sort of being deemed not good enough, even though he could have joined a much bigger team than NXT earlier in the year.
Yeah, I think what we're going to find out with this particular Torzy move is basically, is there really a pipeline approach you can take from the academy / and I'm going to be very clear here, tier 3 or tier 4 level. I'm not even going to call it tier 2 because, as I think you aptly pointed out, I don't care if these, same with Monacy, I don't care if they have simple numbers. They're playing at a level below what actually their talent demands. Like, in a way, what they did is in the short term, they took a hit that they're not in a real tier 2 team, making their way, like, by actually beating the top teams. But they hope, as you're seeing now, that you can, as long as you stick out the initial part where you take a hit, in the end, you can actually skip the line of tier 2 because maybe you do go straight into a Na'Vi, a mousesports, these level of teams, right? Now, that's all well and good, but the problem, in my opinion, is this. I think people are looking at the last couple of years when we have seen an outrageous amount of raw talent come through, and I'll add this as well, a bunch of them got to only have to do it online before they had to do it online. That is not the breathing room a lot of other people are going to get. So I agree. Of all the people at the academy level, the Torzy guy looks like a slam dunk. Him and Monacy basically look like the two. You got to give a try if you're a good team. And since mousesports, by the way, they're actually in a better position than G2 and Na'Vi in that sense. They're not G2 and Na'Vi, so they can actually take a bit more of a gamble. But I agree with you. The problem goes like this. They're gambling on the idea you really can take essentially someone you believe has the talent and just chuck him right at the top scene. Whereas the MHL guy, he's already proven actually that he deserves this shot. If Torzy didn't exist and there was no Mouse Academy squad, of course you would immediately pick this player up instead of Acor and just put him straight in the starting lineup. So I think there's two factors here. One, we'll actually see whether or not the academy thing is just for like finding one needle in a haystack and then you chuck the rest away. Because if it is, the MHL guy, by the way, essentially by joining the academy squad, is also validating the idea you play for the academy squad first, we test you out, your coaches get to work with you, and then if you're good, you go to the main squad. If that's really going to be something, which is kind of, by the way, a bit like a League of Legends approach, if people know that game, that could be a very exciting future. It could actually surpass, sort of like bypass a lot of the problems we've talked about the last few years about there's so little grassroots talent. How do you make it in the top things? Why do people recycle old players, etc.? But my issue is, like, I personally think teams, it's just what people do. When someone successfully pioneers a method, everyone else will just copy and paste until they figure out the nuances of how it works. So I don't hate the Torzy move. I agree with you, though. It is a bit of a head scratcher in the sense of like, but why, aside from he's worked with your coaches and in your team and stuff, why does he get the spot over someone who basically is right there? They already deserve the spot. The other guy, you're gifting an opportunity. This guy almost mandates the opportunity for me. So I agree, that part's weird. If I ignore that, though, I actually think the move's fine. Like, first of all, Acor was such a whack player in mousesports.
Oh, he wasn't even close to the best. You're
not even putting mad pressure on Torzy that he has to carry, by the way. He just has to come in and be better than Acor. I think he will do that. And then secondly, I think the part that confused a lot of people is a lot of people still do the one-for-one trade. So a lot of people I know thought, wait a minute, so Rob scores out and MBK comes in. Well, that doesn't make any sense, does it? Because MBK is not a star player. But I think if you look at the rest of it, the idea is they, in theory, are going to make Torzy a star player because he's the AWPer. So he is the replacement for Rops. To me, NBK comes in to replace whoever the fuck you want, just to basically to be like a quality veteran. They basically have none in this team. So in my opinion, you don't want loads of them. But if all you're asking of MBK is like be a supportive element, frag decently for your level, give us like your experience, maybe secondary call a bit with Dexter. I think actually both moves are good. I like them. I don't see that many downside. I was surprised people were sort of, I know NBK has always had sort of like a bit of a fractious relationship with the community, but I was surprised how many people were sort of against this move and thought it was bad.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing I was going to ask you about. I mean, look, I get it. A lot of people do feel adverse to this idea that, you know, players can just kind of be, you know, recycle, like you say, keep picking up these old boys and not bringing in fresh blood, which, as you say, by the way, the one good thing that I think came out of 2021, and it was primarily because of the We Play initiative, was we did have just an unbelievable amount of raw talent come through in almost every region, by the way. Like, you know, in fact, it's probably one of the first years that Denmark didn't really have any, like, incredible standouts, and actually every other region caught up. Even North America to a certain degree, whether or not some of those players will get opportunities in this game or another game, who knows? But, South America, as I already said, Brazil especially is needed to just cut. But how in a country that populous with so many people playing the game could you only be recycling the same 10 players for the past 4 years? Doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever. And finally, they've stopped doing it and we're starting to see the fruits of that. But other regions, already talked about Malbs MD, really good player, Guatemala, Try from Argentina. It's like almost every country's been producing talent. Torzy, obviously, Hungarian. When's the last time you've had a real, top elite level Hungarian player? Dead Fox doesn't count, despicable though he might be. So for me, it's like, I get it. I understand why people are like, in this current climate, why would you recycle all players like MBK? But then again, Kenny S came back and played for G2. Looked like someone who hadn't played in a while, frankly. And yeah, he had a couple of good maps here and there. You'd expect it from one of the GOATs. But everyone was like, oh, maybe, but what if? And people were sort of open to the idea of Kenny S coming back. So I agree with you. I think a lot of NBK's detractors, they're not doing it based on what he does on the server, because you are talking about one of the all-time greats. No joke. So what can he bring to mousesports? I think it totally depends on how they use him, and it totally depends on what Dexter's design is for him, because I think you're going to get a very different Nathan now. He's not going to argue with Dexter the same way he argued with Alexi B. He said publicly if he could go back in time and deal with that differently, he would. He still wanted to make that OG thing work, and it's not like they've looked better without him. So I don't know, man. I like the idea, but then again, I've always been massively biased towards MBK. I rate him so highly, and I know him personally, so I've got my own biases there.
I also think that's the area people haven't thought it through. The difference with the other in-game leaders and why NBK inevitably always comes to a head with them in some sort of argument is those in-game leaders. I mean, I know Alexi B was pretty inexperienced, but he already, in my opinion, was a very good in-game leader. They're already really good at what they do. So you can have input, but you're not going to disagree with them. It's their show at the end of the day. And by the way, I agree with that. They're the ones who get kicked from the team and fired and blamed if the team loses. But the problem is, right, in mousesports, if anything, Dexter has potentially struggled to actually be an in-game leader. Like, he does all right at both parts. He's all right at fragging and he's all right as an agile. So if anything, I would hope he actually maybe would even welcome the experience of MBK in that sense. This could actually be a rare instance where MBK could have his input, the other guy could use it, and they could actually meet sort of in the middle, as it were.
Well, you'd hope so. I mean, all I will say is, I mean, like, for me, it's not even about what MBK does. It's that you've clearly upgraded on A-Core. For whatever reason, that just didn't work. It's like, how good can Torzy be? Because as we've said repeatedly, in the last 6 months of 2021, it's a pretty weak AWP field. In terms of the top elite level AWPers compared to like years gone by. And so there's definitely room for somebody to come in and just by virtue of being good in a weakened field, help propel a team up the rankings, because obviously the AWPing role is so important to what teams want to do. So I like the moves. As always, I mean, you have to remember with Mouse, they're always going to be working within a budget. They're always going to be looking to discover talent. I don't think MBK's got the bag for on this contract. I think he could have gone probably to Valorant and made more money, honestly. I think he's here out with the love of the game and a chance to prove he can still be competitively relevant. One last hurrah. So
by the way, I even think that also plays into it. Look, this, like NBK was already someone where for some weird reason the community was sort of out on him a couple of years ago. I think it's just because they heard the stories of the drama of he argues with the IGL or whatever. And so because they got kicked from Vitality, for me, I noticed it in Vitality. When he was kicked from Vitality, that was when people went hard against him. Because if you remember, the year before, actually the community went the other way. They wanted NBK to be the one who got the shot in G2, not the existing Shox lineup. Like actually the fans were riding with that NBK Mixwell lineup initially. So I think the other thing that I think has sort of put him over the top and fucked him with the community is this thing where, and this is a warning to all CSGO pros out there, even though I know none of you said this, if the public takes the gist that when you say you retire or you leave your last team that you are going to Valorant to be a pro, if in any context you come back to CSGO, unless you're one of the Americans for some bizarre reason where they just allow you, everyone else is treated like you were a traitor. You're treated like Semler was because he had the audacity to cast the Overwatch League for 1 year. As though in doing so, you know, he'd like ripped out the heart of his own child and, you know, cursed the old gods and fucking like smeared shit across the national flag of Counter-Strike. He hadn't done any of that, of course. He just went for 1 year after being massively bullied by a community over some horrific tragedies he had in his own life, but didn't feel like making a twit longer about. Basically, he just said, I'll take a year off to clear my head. Oh, that's right. I love Counter-Strike so much. I'll come back. And everyone was like, you are nothing to that, as they themselves go and play fucking Valorant for fun because they don't enjoy matchmaking in CS. So we all know what the CS community is like. Well, unfortunately, basically, as far as I know, he was always... I know this guy behind the scenes. He was always looking for offers in both games. If he had his choice, as you can see, he didn't want to leave CSGO. I think he even himself just implied, like, get right. Like, I'm just going to stream some Valorant. I don't believe he ever actually said, like, I am leaving CS forever. I don't like CS. I like Valorant now, and I am a Valorant player. Because people have tried to make it like, look, he came... You know when they do... By the way, here's a red flag and a half for you. He came crawling back. Spoiler, nobody who ever is called on an internet forum crawling back ever is crawling back, because why would someone crawling back be so relevant? Thousands of people on the internet would need to discuss it. They wouldn't. It's always used as some fucked way to explain that, like, maybe you made a choice you regret or you want to do something else. Like, because that's one of my triggers, that phrase, mate, because they do it to us all the time as well. Like, I've noticed it's always the moron who knows nothing about the industry goes, Mitchell, Lewis and Thorin, didn't they just come crawling back to the mid? It's like... Yeah, of course I did, mate. You know what? You definitely know the industry landscape. Yes, totally.
I mean, you know, also of interest is like, because again, people forget, like, because MBK has been around so long and he started as a pro in Source when he was 15. You know, that was when I met Nathan. And you know, he was originally like, you know, an AWPing breakout prodigious talent. You know, I mean, he's done everything in the game. And so, you know, he's only 27, which I know only 27 when we talk about like Jax is old for 27. No, his career is already 12 years long.
Yes.
And so when you think about, you know, kind of like all the stuff he's gone through and how he's still learning and still evolving and developing stuff, I thought it was interesting that he put out, you know, which, by the way, I just wouldn't do. I wouldn't do this because I've seen how everything on the internet.
The same thing. I know exactly where you're going on this one. Yeah,
I've seen how everything on the internet can get weaponized. But like, so what does it say about MBK? That after having a fraught interaction with his last IGL, essentially being removed from the team because the org wanted to go with Alexi B. How's that one worked out for you? And, you know, he sort of reflected on it, said, oh, I could do it differently. And then he's gone and got therapy and he's been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Then done, not just a twit longer about it, put up a really like long, thoughtful document. He's on the Google Doc Meta, obviously, talking about how he now realizes how this could have colored some interactions in the past. And like, do you know how many people just like go through their entire life not reflecting on anything they do? Like the majority of people, right? They're just here, they just exist, and they just do what the fuck they want, and everyone else can go and fuck themselves. This guy has obviously shown some form of contrition, remorse about past interactions, and a desire to make himself better so he can be better within a team. And then he's been public and transparent about it, which honestly is unbelievably brave in a scene as vitriolic and hateful as esports. So, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I think Mouse could even be getting a much better version of MBK than you ever saw in OG. For real, like, because he's working on himself as a man as well as working on himself as a player and a teammate. So I don't know. I want this to work out for him and for Mouse, who I think are a team that have developed so much talent down the years. It'd be nice if they could like turn it round even in the absence of Rops. It'd be good.
I also think, I'll echo what you said there as well. I don't think people actually realize how crazy long NBK's career is. Like, here's a stat for you. NBK, I think someone said this on like Twitter or Reddit or something, but it's accurate. NBK, if you consider he was in OG in 2020, and obviously if you remember around the autumn was when they actually had that run. They were like 6th on the HLTV rankings. So if we take that, that's, by the way, spoiler, a low point in his career. Like, he can actually say with no, like, fucking no shenanigans, in CSGO, Every year until 2021, he was on a team that was ranked top 6 at some point in time, right? I don't think people understand. We can start knocking fucking like the greatest players off all time off the list, and none of them are going to have that fucking stat, mate. That is an unbelievable stat. That is like, if people don't get it, like, you know, when people use that phrase talismanic, this is the ultimate CS talisman. Like, there is no player, because think about the eras he's connecting, dude. He's connecting NiP 87 and 0 to fucking Fnatic era, to the SK Gaming Brazilians coming in, to fucking FaZe Clan, to Astralis, to now all the ZWoo, Simple shit. He's still there until basically last year. Last year's the 1 year where basically he got kicked out the team. It didn't happen with Double Pony, and he took a break. Like, again, the idea, like, this is why it's the same reason I always go to bat for Kenny S. I'm not speculating. Maybe this guy could one day be good again. You notice I don't say that about Nico with a C from back in the day. Or like, the difference is I'm picking the people who have the most crazy track record ever of just almost like magnetically being drawn back to the top of the scene. So he's another one. Yes, he's not doing it from the start position like Kenny S. He's going to, this is the tough part, he's going to contribute intangibles you won't see on the server. But I can just tell you again, if you've listened to the comms of how he communicates in the game, if you know what he's like as a competitor, like, here's the good thing about NBK contrasted with someone like KNG that I was talking about earlier. When NBK fucks up his career, it is the right reason and it is the wrong execution. That is almost the opposite for fucking KNG half the time. What I actually appreciate about NBK going and reflecting on all this stuff like he has done now, and I do agree, I think being a little bit too open, you could have said it in a different way that would have protected you from the obvious shit tier posts you're going to see in the future about this topic. But what I would say is this, what I appreciate is what you said. It's the idea he's reflected, and what he's had to realise is, but I never was actually intentionally a negative element in the team. I actually, essentially, the reason I'm having an argument with my IGL is I really believe this isn't the way to win. I believe we can do something different with the squad. I think what he's finally understood is that is a brilliant impulse, and it's why, by the way, everyone wants him in his team initially, but it's also why, inevitably, if he can't resolve those issues, or maybe he doesn't know how to communicate with people who think differently than him, then he's ended up in this scenario. So yeah, I agree. There's too many people in the world, mate, who they've never thought, like, I'll give you an example. The obvious contrast is his old mate, Happy. The joke is this, and I am not joking, unfortunately. If you sat Happy down today and injected him with a truth serum, he would say, no, I was basically right in all those scenarios. It really was the children who were out of touch, not me. Like, that would be sort of his take, unfortunately. And that is why, justifiably, he hasn't got a stat like I was top 6 every year. He just washed out the scene half a decade ago, and he himself, funnily enough, is in Valorant and not even that relevant over there as far as I know.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. Like I say, I mean, look, this probably will be Nathan's last hurrah, right? I mean, like, if it crashes and burns, it's gonna not be a cool, final chapter in the book. But at the end of the day, like you say, how many people have achieved what he has? And I'm like you, I always back him to turn it around. Like I said, full fucking honest to God, biased as fuck. Because when you know somebody that long, and by the way, anyone who lived through the Source trenches is all right with me. Yeah, I mean, like, I just hope there's like a nice little final chapter for him, so we can look back on his career and say, you know what, I went out on something approximate to a high, something commensurate to my abilities and contribution to the game. Right. The other big story that happened is we've got Safe finally confirmed to join Furia. On previous episodes, I was a little bit apprehensive that Furia were going to roll back the years and bring back Henny and by extension Lucas. But no, the reports that had been circulating earlier are accurate. They brought in Safe. It's going to give the team more of its traditional shape. Because they're not going to be reliant on Art to be that primary AWPer anymore. And this is just, for me, a great all-round pickup. It's probably going to be the first time they've really had that dominant AWP presence since Henny left Furia. And now you wonder, what's this team gonna do? I mean, I know Safe, again, it's the age, it's the make or break age. He's 27. He's definitely getting his big call up late in the day. But as we've seen with Jackson, as I was wrong about, maybe there is no barrier these days. And Safe has looked so good over at Pain. I mean, so insanely good, both on his stat line and the eye test. I'm really, really excited about this, and I think the scene would certainly be better with a strong Furia mixing it up as the great perennial upset team, especially when you look at what the top 5 is going to be like this year. Having Furia in there as a spoiler, it just makes the scene all the more delicious. Do you think that's on the cards for Furia with Sif?
Yeah, this is one of the ones where I actually think this is one of the most slam dunk moves I've ever seen. It's if anything, it's an indictment of how bad the Brazilian scene has been the last few years with the infamous contract prison, where your buyout is insane and you want to leave, and they even want to sell you essentially, but they're just trying to gouge everyone for as much as possible. Because this was a move that everyone wanted to happen last year. Let's be really, could probably go back in time 6 months as another slam dunk. So to me, I don't see any downside to it. I even think there's actually an unexpected upside people aren't factoring in, which is unlike other moves which are a slam dunk like Rops to FaZe. Here's the difference. When Rops joins FaZe, the pressure only just began, mate. If you thought there was pressure before of getting to no, now you have to also be number 1 in FaZe, and then FaZe has to go to the top of the scene. The cool thing for Safe is, even though, by the way, there's a world in which he actually ends up being the best player in Furia already had KScR and Yuri. They have some fucking banging riflers. So you imagine if he just gets even close to his old level in Pain, mate, the firepower in this team is going to be big time. Remember, I've just created a scenario where when we're talking about firepower, I'm now 4th going to talk about Art. I haven't even mentioned Art yet. The defining player of the lineup. One of the most unique gimmick styles of play probably ever in CSGO. So I think you just look at that squad. They've still got a few things to figure out. They're still figuring out the whole scenario with the 5th player and all that jazz. Or Art's going to have to transition back to normal. Listen, there's a few things to figure out. But I actually think the upside, maybe it's because people are so underwhelmed by the last year of Furia because they never made good on the 2020 run when they lost Henny. But I feel like this should be way more hyped as a move. Like, dude, I agree with you. There's a world where this team is literally contending for big international titles. Like, the firepower is going to be crazy. I think it's really a good move.
Yeah, and as I said, I mean, look, the only way that I can see this move failing is if in, like, some fucking way he gets inside his own head and, you know, stops playing the game he's playing. Because right now, if you watch Safe play, you know, he's a guy who, like, he goes for everything. He's like some old school shit, like some Kenny S shit. If there's a peak to be had, he's going for it. If there's a frag to be had, he's going for it. He plays aggressive. And obviously, the problem Furia have had is, like, well, first of all, just that the replacements for Henny haven't been all that great. But obviously Art was, like, you know, that insane kind of, like, you know, lurking but really aggressive pushing style, getting up in people's faces, being on weird parts of the map, you know, always behind you somehow. You know, him doing that as the primary AWPer obviously completely fucks up their tactical approach to the game, and it's too big a gun to give away. So not only have they had to change their tactics, do it with weaker personnel, they're also essentially changing one of the key components that makes Furia that unpredictable wild card when you play him. They're taking that away because, you know, Art has had to play a lot more passive, even though he still does crazy psycho things all the time. So this, to me, just gives them their shape back. As you said, insane firepower. If KScR and Yuri continue to play at the standards they played, you know, these past few years. And yeah, I'm thinking, out of all of the teams that are going to come from nowhere and maybe fill a gap early in the year, if one of these super teams doesn't work out, I think Fury is just ripe to snatch that. I think they'll say thank you very much if, you know, Vitality takes a bit too long to get their shit together, or G2 doesn't hit the ground running with its new lineup. Yeah, Fury are right in there. For me, it's them and Virtus.pro that you really need to watch out if you're one of the top teams, because they're coming to snatch your shit.
Oh, both real. Underrated lineups as well. Both teams with mad firepower. I think people are sleeping on them because of the names, you know.
Yeah, totally. So there was an interesting development. Apex are a team, you know, that's been around for a while, and they've had lots of problems. They've been cycling people in and out of their roster, but they've been making some pretty big announcements. They've done that thing that some teams do where they, you know, stagger out, announcing name after name after name. But anyway, the team that they've actually assembled doesn't look that bad. I'm not going to, you know, get carried away, obviously, because you can never do that. But in terms of what they've had historically, I don't know. This is an interesting one. Tell me what you think. So the IGL is obviously a Cillian who, you know, we've had our ups and downs on him down the years. Probably one of those, one of those Danish talents that never got to the level it should have done. Whatever you think that level might be, he definitely fell short of it. They brought in Nork, who I don't even think he did anything wrong, really. You know, he was playing well. He was like the best player on NIP, probably outside of Rez. Obviously gets replaced for Device. You can't argue with it. But to see him not get an opportunity in a top team, pretty crazy. I guess he kind of missed the boat with Fnatic there. They brought in Jacob, a young upcoming Swedish player. He's only like 16, called Chorzy, who, again, if you've seen him play, he's another one of these guys where it's like, you want him to be, you know, this promising prospect, because Lord knows Sweden needs one of them to come along and not be an also-ran. And then they've rounded it out with Stiko, who obviously I've always said a lot of good things about on this show, despite maybe his career not being sort of commensurate to his incredible mind for the game. So actually, low-key, this roster, I'm not going to, you know, big it up and say anything, but, you know, I mean, shit, man, you could get top 20 with this team, right?
Yeah, I actually think this is an example of where people are going to expect, like what your preamble sort of preempted, the idea that we're going to look at the names we know and overrate. I think, if anything, these players are going to be underrated. Like, I agree, Cillian's a player where he's a journeyman in-game leader. At this point, he's sort of in the vein of a Snappy, where, like, look, they're certainly not the people I'd be picking first for an elite team, but they certainly can do their job. Like, they are competent people at their job, and I imagine he will call a pretty decent game. He knows what he's doing. I've heard from enough players to know they rate him as an IGL. So, okay, I think he'll do a decent enough job, and obviously he's not in a top team right now anyway. Nork, as you say, I don't even really understand why he's not been doing anything. Like, what was the premise there? Like, the idea no one else wanted this guy and no one even gave him a shot, I don't really get. Like, he was so young in his career still. People forget he only played a couple of years. It was mainly online. Like, I wanted to see this guy actually have a real chance in a team where it's built around him. So he's already a player I wanted to see play anyway. Jacob, I mean, he was probably one of the best parts of Extreme. He's one of the only players that didn't seem to fall off a cliff. The Chorzy guy, I don't know very well, but if you look at the stats and who he's played, certainly seems like a prospect, a rare prospect out of Sweden. I don't know how the others have missed him. And then if the last piece we're adding is Stiko, this is where people don't get team building. That's the fucking chef's kiss to this lineup. That you didn't go for another up-and-coming player and then just go, right, let's see who makes it, and then we'll cut off them. You've almost tried to make a real squad. You've gone, right, and I'm going to add legitimately an overqualified supportive element who's got massive experience and has shown in all his teams he's about making the stars, and he'll just do what it takes to win. Perfect. If you're a Cillian, by the way, what a great fucking well-rounded squad you've given me. I've got proven pieces that have still got potential like Nork. I've got pieces that are already good in the sense of Jacob. And I've got an upcoming prospect in this young Swedish guy that if he doesn't work out, I've still got a decent team. If he does work out, now, as you say, no one might be cooking with gas, mate. This might be a real sleeper team.
Yeah, it's definitely got some potential. And as I said, look, I think obviously you start by aiming for that, you know, crack that top 20, which, by the way, is eminently doable if you look at the teams that are down there towards that lower end. You know, there's some teams that, I mean, if you just look at the rankings now, 20th is a team that probably not many people have even heard of, a team called Ecstatic, who've been obviously out there grinding, got a guy in it called Wolfie, shout out to him. Wolfie from NA. So, you know, there's definitely room. I mean, there's a lot of teams jostling at the bottom end. And easily this team could sneak in there. And also the good news is, I don't know if I'm talking out of school here. I certainly hope I'm not. You know, they are taking it mega seriously. You know, sometimes these rosters get thrown together and it's just a roster. It's just something to do. It's just a salary. It's not really a serious project. You know, from what I can tell, the Apex management are really supporting these guys. They're currently out there boot camping, getting ready for their fucking first, you know, all these qualifiers that are going to be coming up. They want to get into these big tournaments and get some upsets. So they've got the right mindset. They've got the right attitude. Is the roster good enough? I guess we'll find out. But I definitely thought they were a noteworthy team, you know, out of all of the other action that's going on. It's nice to see a kind of smaller org, you know, be ambitious, you know, relative to their size. So definitely you can keep an eye on Apex for sure. And the good news is I will be checking in with Stiko at some point on the Richard Lewis show as soon as he gets back from that boot camp, most likely. So watch this space. Right, what else have we got? There was another one I wanted to cover. Fuck.
Maybe EG?
I mean, it's confirmed, I suppose. I mean, we did go over it a little bit in the.
There's even a little bit of spice that wasn't in the news. That was just from Twitter yesterday. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, go on then.
Basically, the person who was currently, I think, the CEO of Evil Geniuses when they came back as an org, and obviously it's like this is unfortunately I can't go through the whole history, but basically Evil Geniuses, yes, years and years ago was Alex Garfield. Then there was that weird period where PPD, their daughter captain, took over and himself was like the CEO, but then he wanted to play again, so he quit, and then they were bought by someone else. And anyway, yada 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 yada. The modern EG is the one, if people remember, was famously everyone flamed them for that rebrand where it was just evil. It wasn't the. And then the person who's the CEO is basically like someone I've never heard of before. It's someone called Nicole Lapointe, and she's someone where she's fairly new, as far as I know, to like front-facing aspect of the industry. I think she's been in some like office jobs in the past or something. And basically, since this was the person in charge of EG around the time, people will know this from the show, which is why I'm telling the story. We're about, say, a year ago, there was that rumor, which wasn't totally out of thin air, despite how many times people say as much, that EG maybe backs out of CSGO. Maybe when they had the lineup with Stanislaw and they have Zeus as the coach, so maybe they eventually just say, actually, knock this on the head. It's not going anywhere. It's not good enough for us all. Or maybe CSGO isn't for us and we prefer COD, Overwatch, whatever it might be, the other games. If you think about it as an org, they're going more the franchise league route, it feels, right? So they didn't feel like as much of a CS org. Now, here's what's interesting. In light of that, I did expect fully that we're just going to have some Astralis level PR fuckery where the joke is you just never admit the truth if it's not entirely positive. You just always spin some angle that it's great, this, that, the other. So I was expecting when they made a tweet, this woman made a tweet that was basically along the lines of like, we're going to save NACS. And I thought, and I basically tweeted as much, like, well, that's fucking rich because you're part of the reason it needs saving, aren't you? Like at the end of the day, Team Liquid and EG were at NACS, and the fact that EG was completely irrelevant at the last major is part of why NACS looks like silly. So when I said essentially like your org is part of the reason why, whereas normally there's two options. They'd either normally, Richard, go with the bullshit PR angle of like, well, actually, there were hard decisions we had to make and we didn't want to do that. Or they'd just go the other modern day approach. They just go, if they're in bad and just go, what do you know, man? Or just some stupid shit like that. This person actually took it was almost like they didn't know the internet. They took a reasonable approach and were just like, yeah, you're right, basically. Like, we did take a lot of L's and we had to learn from them. And that's what we're going to turn around to, which, by the way, great example how you should handle it. If you want to be an org, you want to actually be front-facing and not be PR speak. That's how you actually seem like an authentic human being. And I certainly hope that is what this lineup's going to do. I will say, though, it does segue into the fact that I actually think, despite those good intentions, this lineup to me looks anything like but that. It looks like Stewie 2K's Last Dance. This motherfucker's gone out off the reservation as well. He's doing his own Last Dance, boys. Except he's doing a Last Dance for a team that could have had a Last Dance, but he decided to go tango with Brazilians. That's even worse. If I was Jack Etienne, I'd just be sat there going, really, motherfucker? Really?
I know.
Really, motherfucker? Oh, and you're getting Valdez? Really, motherfucker? Tell me more, because that whole story was triggering me. Go on.
Yeah. No. So listen, I've talked to Nicole briefly. So because again, she's someone I really want to get on the podcast because as you say, coming from a different background, becoming a CEO of Evil Geniuses, obviously having known all the Evil Geniuses management, including the great gone but not forgotten Alex Garfield. So I really wanted to sort of pick her brains about it because actually what's really interesting is her background was so she worked for an investment company and their specific expertise was in taking businesses that were like falling on hard times and basically like turning them around. Like you nurse them back to health and then maybe you flip them or you take your, if they've made enough money, you take your capital out, with a profit share and all of that stuff. And so that was her expertise. And so she didn't have any esports experience before that, but she just sort of identified Evil Geniuses on its basis as a brand within esports that was failing. And so that fascinates me, frankly, because Evil Geniuses, correctly, she's identified probably one of the most mismanaged brands in the post-Alex Garfield space of all time. Think about where they were when we were coming up and think about where they were when she took over. Now, absolutely, she's probably made some exuberant, naive decisions, because you want everything to be, what's right in your head and what sounds right on paper. But it's these little nuances about how esports is different and what's good for a mainstream business might not always work in the esports landscape. But for her to sort of say, Yeah, we made mistakes actually, and we've learned a lot of lessons, and they've been costly lessons. I don't want to sound like Brian Stelter, but yeah, it's how refreshing. You know what I mean? Like, it's actually, you don't hear a lot of CEOs basically saying, "Yeah, we fucked up." You don't hear that, especially not in esports, where you think about it. Motherfuckers like Nicola Nyholm will tell you it was all right all the time. Casper shits out there telling you, "No, look, he was never at AWPA, and Clavers actually."
I still think, if I had to pick the craziest attempts at gaslighting everyone else's reality of Nicola Nyholm, I still think number one's a sleeper. It's when he implied he never wanted Kirby gone and he wouldn't sign him again. Dude, if there's one, put it this way, Kirby himself looks in the mirror every day and goes, "Fuck, why did I leave the team?" Like, the idea you're going to act like you could run that back. And also, he if you notice, Nicola Nyholm was always shrewd in that he would always make a statement that sounded like, "Wait a minute, if he's the boss of Astralis, he can do it." But he'd always do it at the moment like he wasn't actually in charge of that. So it had no real cost to say. He basically just goes like, "Hey guys, I still like that old player we had that didn't make it. 3 likes. Anyone liking it? Am I a good guy?" Like, it's like the most fucking low hanging fruit of all time, isn't it? Like, you don't actually have to put your skin in the game. You just go, "I wish I could have signed you." So I think that's one of the craziest gaslightings of all time. Like, the idea you're like, "Listen, I know I had a bloody era and that, but I wish I'd kept you." Shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm used to. That's like my daily reality, though. So yeah, when someone comes in who actually speaks like a human being, and by the way, even if fairly polite, I actually just on a genuine human level, I just appreciate when people actually treat you like you're also a human. It's a crazy concept, isn't it?
Yeah, and like I say, I think as well, it's obviously, the people she knows in esports haven't been very complimentary about either of us. And
I imagine we're probably going to be number one, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, she was incredibly nice to her. Very, like I said, it was a really nice, cool conversation. And, somebody I definitely think that, I'm sure I'm not going to agree with everything she says. As I've always said, agreement is one of the most overrated qualities between humans. Like, it's so fucking passé when you break it down. So I mean, look, I want EG to succeed. I mean, by the way, for no other reason than the fact that they're a North American organization. That when I think about, like, she's probably at those like esports soirees where all the other owners are there going, "Why are you staying in CS, man? You've got an aid shot in your ear. Valorant's popping off, bro," and doing a fucking TikTok while he's trying to talk to you and stuff. And it's like, she's stayed true to the core identity at EG, which was, it was always a CS team. It's always been in the game. So that deserves respect and deserves a lot of kudos. Now, look, the lineup, I said I'm ambivalent. If they got Valde, it would have been someone else, like, but they're not getting that, and so I don't have a read on this. As I said, there's too many variables. I'll need to see them start playing and see the improvement and how they go from match to match to make a judgment. But I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't excited, even if it's a fucking train wreck. I'll be watching it. I'll be watching them play religiously. Just because it's got the prospect to go down in flames, it also does, in a mad fucked up way, also does have the potential to save NA.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, if they get to Team Liquid's level and those two teams have a mad rivalry again, because that fucked off, if that's popping off and that's getting numbers, they'll all come flocking back, wanting a piece of that pie, because that's how they think, Yes. But she's not doing that. Nicole's not doing that. She is like trying to build an actual Counter-Strike team that's competitively relevant, among other things. So yeah,
I definitely echo the sentiment as well. We actually need EG and CS:GO. Like, there aren't many big orgs in NA now A, willing to spend money, or B, have any long-term future. A lot of them are just waiting for their time to cash out, or just see if the game dies, basically. Like, they're just enjoying the last hurrah of the player peak and the viewership peak, basically. So I actually do think we need people like that in the scene. Like, as you say, we even need it for the narratives, place to home the good NA players. Here's the thing, though. I will say, like, let me think how you phrase this. Whatever, I'll make a joke. Here we go. Here's the joke for you, right? In the future, imagine what would Nadeshot say if he was actually in a oppressive totalitarian regime like communism in the Soviet Union? He'd say, "Good morning, let's join a queue to try and get some bread."
Not bad. Not your best. Workshop that one.
Setup. Wasn't the best setup, but whatever. I got there in the end. You get what I'm saying.
You can workshop that one.
Of course, is he wouldn't have any of those brilliant Marvel movies which make up 95% of his social commentary. So.
Indeed. Obviously, Miku, former EG guy, he's gone over to that Mad Lions team, which I can't keep up with. Mad Lions
of a team, I keep forgetting.
Yeah, no. So right. So okay, they've got Kuban over there coaching. Obviously, the legend. Polish player. I'm sure you'll think legend's overselling it, but whatever. He's all right in my book. And so
you win like 6 or 7 majors, you can be a legend, Rich. I don't think that's too harsh a fucking.
Is that all right? Okay, just checking. I'm always worried that you're gonna go. He's no legend.
That's okay.
He's no existence. You know what I mean? But anyway, so Miku was in EG. Bizarrely was one of the better players in that team, kind of as it was feeling. I know he was signed on a short-term contract. What you have to remember was, I think it was it OG that he could have potentially signed for at the same time?
Other team, yes.
Yeah, and he chose EG, and it didn't work out. He had some good tournaments, he had some not so good tournaments, but it was a very dysfunctional, failing team. And now he finds himself in Mad Lions, itself sort of a dysfunctional and failing team, and one that's way behind where EG were at. But now, right, so get this, they've bent, right, so do you remember when they had that Spanish player Sausol or whatever he's called, or Solzal or however you say it? So he's on the bench now. Waro2k, the guy that's meant to be,
he was about him, yeah.
Waro2k was the next simple before Monazy was the next simple.
Yes.
And obviously loads of cheating allegations, of course, as well.
Which just go hand in hand with being
simple. Yeah. If you are going to be the big simple, that's happening, right? For real. Yes. And so he got better. And by the way, just before fucking Cybersport RU picks up on that quote and says I called Simple a clown or something stupid. What I mean by that is, specifically, to be as good as Simple, if you don't have the reputation Simple has, and you were as good, or even 70% as good, people would accuse you of cheating, because that is the scene and that's how it works. We're not saying Simple is a cheat. That wasn't intimated. But anyway, so now Borup is over there, because they went sort of going back to the Danish roots again. So it's Borup, that JL guy from Lithuania is still on the roster. They didn't bench him. Mihu's in there. TMB, I can't even remember if he was part of the... Anyway, it's a fucking mess. I don't even... When they announced the first roster of people that we didn't know, they were saying, we're going to develop all this cool young talent. That's what you have to do in the scene right now. And then they just didn't. And
that was the one, if people remember, it's in Best by the Numbers, where they had that IGL and they were like, we're going to develop him. And then like a week later, they were like, he's kicked.
They just got the
No, that almost unironic is what they're like, he's kicked. Not experienced, is he? Like, well, no shit.
Yeah. He literally said, we're going to develop him, give him the experience. And then 1 week later, he just wasn't experienced. Like, what the fuck do you... Honestly, man. So, Mad Lions looks to be like a fucking train wreck over there. So, I feel sorry for Miku. He's another guy, by the way, who at 25, you have to wonder what his career future looks like if this is, after decent performances in EG, if this is kind of what's on the table for him. So, we won't labour the point. I'm just saying that is a move that happened.
The problem with the team you have here is this is an example of how not to build international teams. This is just a bunch of players rammed together, and then it never works out. So what do you expect? I agree on the Mihu one. The one thing I'll say is maybe his saving grace is I've noticed actually he's one of those ones where when I talk to pro players, they actually seem to be fairly up on it. They think he's a pretty good player. So he almost has like a little bit of like street cred, I think. So maybe he can get in another team.
Yeah, well, I hope so. And then just to round out all the roster news before we go into viewer questions, this is, I know this will be heartbreak for you. You know what happens when you click on Oscar's name on HLTV now? Yeah.
Teamless, isn't it?
It now says no team. He's out of Sinners. Surprising for me. I'm not quite sure why. Because sure, he's 30 years old, but I don't think, whenever I've watched Sinners play, which by the way has been quite a bit, in the second half of last year, he looked to be a very good player, and in fact, actually augmented by some exciting talent as well. Like that Neofrag guy, for example, was another one that looked pretty good. So, he's gone. They've got a player called Forzi coming in for him. Is this the end for Oscar, surely at 30, he's not going to join another team, is he?
I'm just looking at like the Twitlonger he wrote. Like, let me just see. Like, he claims he actually decided to leave the team. I mean, again, he doesn't get explicit, so we can't know if that's because he already knew they were signing this other player and that guy's going to be the Orp or something. So maybe it was one of those ones where it's like,
oh, so apparently he was actually sold. I'm just quickly reading the report. Sinners say he has been sold.
Oh, okay. That's
so,
weird because that implies he was sold to someone.
Yeah, so I guess, Thomas received a very good offer from the European team, which he was interested in, and we negotiated the transfer. That's what it says.
Okay. Well, the good thing is, if you read the Twitlonger, he absolutely does basically say that he has drive and joy to compete and he wants to play and he's not giving up. So the good news is, and I actually think this is where people did write Oscar off way too early, because they knew all that stuff about he's weird and he's old and blah, 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 blah. They never actually bothered to stop and look at the fact that, like, when he actually does play, it seems like a pretty consistent player. He puts in the hours. It seems like a good teammate generally, as in he's not a negative presence. Like, to me, there's a lot of upside. So again, I would hope, by the way, he just goes to another team a bit like Sinners, bunch of young players who are coming through who are good and have prospects. He sort of like holds the fort a bit while they get their shit together, and he just gets to keep continuing on. Because if you saw, he was another one of those players who was in that bad spot where it's like, you're too good for tier 2, but no one in tier 1's really going to give you a shot. So I feel like it has to be this level of team, because at the moment, if a Mouse Spots or someone wanted Oscar, surely they came back already at this point. You know, like, he must have already had people inquired if they were interested. So I just imagine, I think it's cool, by the way, if he wants to keep playing, if he just sticks around at this level, like, he's definitely good enough to play.
Yeah, I mean, for me, he's another one of those players where lots of what ifs around his career, because he did acquire a reputation, mostly sort of coming out of that Mouse Sports run, where people were a little bit, he was a weirdo, essentially, is how he got labelled. And I've said it, and I know you can argue about whether or not stuff like this has any relevance on a podcast talking about the game, and maybe it should stay behind the scenes. But as I've told the story before, when we were doing the E-League stuff, they turned up to the place they were staying in to do a pre-agreed interview for TV. And Oscar said, I don't want to do it now, and would refuse to come out of his room like a fucking teenager. So, it was very strange. And I was scratching my head, when the production crew got back to me about that and said, like, oh, we haven't done Oscar now. He's backed out of the interview. I was like, what? Why? No reason. Just didn't want to, literally refused to come out of his room. And people in the Mouse Sports orbit and in his orbit there said that's the type of shit we deal with all the time. And it was like, it was a little bit of a glimpse as to why maybe his career wasn't as, stratospheric as his talent, right? And so there's always going to be a few what ifs. But I mean, honestly, just in terms of his raw ability, like, he is a fucking phenomenally talented Orper. I don't know where I would place him all time, but he could have been on a top team, and he could have been winning tournaments. There's no doubt in my mind about that. So, if he's happy, I'm happy. I hope I'll be intrigued to see what team it is. I can't really think of, if it's being described as a good European team and one he has interest in, you would imagine it has to be further up the food chain than Sinners. So who knows? I mean, fuck. I don't even want to speculate, but it'll be interesting for sure. So there you go. That's all of the roster news, because obviously, as I say, you're getting a slightly shorter show, because in approximately 30 minutes, I'm going to be jumping on.
Oh, wait a minute, though. That's the problem. Even though you say not to speculate, the problem is now you've made me think it has to be a relevant team. So here's the problem I'm thinking. There's not that many even can be, Richard. Like, for real, this isn't even a joke. It might be someone like OG. Like, logically, it lines up, right?
So the word on the street is that he'd probably end up playing with Sonny.
Oh, right. So maybe it's like a new squad based around former Gorillas players or whatever the fuck. Yeah, it could be, I guess. There's still loads of talent. That's what people forget. There's loads of talent in the scene still. Loads.
But yeah, I mean, like, that could be interesting, because, the rumors are it's Oscar joins the 2 out of Gorillas, so Sonny and Sergey.
Like, start to a team already, yeah.
And then obviously, I think Chris J is meant to be in that mix, because I suppose we should have mentioned that when we were doing all the Mouse Sports roundup. After 8 years on the roster, Chris J's officially left Mouse. And I mean, there's not many fucking players that have an 8-year tenure with an org. I'm trying to think if I can ever think of anything like that in CS. It's pretty wild. So, I mean, the idea that there's a transfer fee there makes me wonder, because it can't be fucking Guerrillas. It has to be a real org at that point.
You have to have some money, yeah.
Well, who's paying for the money? So yeah, I don't know.
And to be fair, of all the players, you said it was Sergey and Sonny. If it was Flusher from Guerrillas, I'd say maybe you didn't pay his taxes this year. You know, he just had a bit of cash lying around. Maybe it's Oscar attack right off.
Not even in his own project.
32-year-old Czechoslovakian. To be fair, he probably was Czechoslovakian when he was born. That's how fucking old he is. But no, but was he? Is a Czech Republic player a tax write-off? And also, no, Flusher, he isn't a tax write-off. And why are you still listing 30,000 for this entity called Pronax? Whatever, just everyone gets a straight, apparently.
You didn't, at least why are you still listing 30,000 for this entity called Pro Cheats?
Yes.
Could have done that.
What is this workshop downloadable map that has some sort of like FDA attached to it? What's that all about? Never mind.
Nothing to see here. And with that, we will segue into our viewer questions. Remember, if you do support us on Patreon, $50 or above the tierage, you get to ask any question and we'll answer it to the best of our ability live on the show. We've had some crazy questions lately. My advice to you would be, don't make them so insanely specific. I would have to do like a research thesis on the topic beforehand, as we've had. That's shout out to you, the bear. He's like, on page 426. So you're like, right, okay. So I can go and read the book if you want, but it's going to take time. So more general, the better. So Zumba says, question for Richard. How many jobs have you had? Seems like you've worked in everything. And indeed, this is something of a meme in my community. They always saw Richard's had every job. I mean, what they don't factor in is that, you know, as a 39-year-old man, I've obviously been alive for longer and had to be financially independent for longer and therefore had to work for longer. And also, unlike some privileged middle class to upper class kind of people, I had to work. There was no option. Yes. So my employment career started very young. So
Richard couldn't just sit playing Fortnite asking for taters out of the fucking kitchen when he was 22 years old, believe it or not.
No. In fact, like I say, I mean, I had to lie about my age to get a paper round when I was like 11 years old to help supplement the income because my dad was banged up. And obviously, you know, my stepfather sort of drifted in and out until he married my mother. So paper round is the first job, then pot washer at a kitchen, a classic. If you're in the Northeast, everyone has probably done that. Then I upgraded to waiter. What did I do after that? Also, by the way, people conflate my hobbies with work. Like when I say, I used to keep bees. True. It used to be the, you know, youngest member of like.
I thought you were an actual beekeeper with like fucking every day getting up.
Hive. No, it was just had a few hives on like, outside my house. And, you know, but like, by the way, as well, people always go, you must be lying about that. Still to this day, you can ask me any question about bees. Like, my bee trivia is insane because I was really into it. I was like, it would
also be the shittest fake flex of all time. Well, you know what? I used to fuck around with them bees.
Yeah,
like that honeydew. I got the fucking direct source. What are you talking? It's not even a flex, is it? Why would you lie about that one thing?
Yeah, well, check this out. It's propolis, a natural antiseptic that they can use in brain surgery. Yeah, brilliant. Exciting stuff. Then, obviously, I worked on a farm where I had to kill chickens, which is one of the worst jobs I've ever had. That's the one that, like, you know, that was one of the jobs that mentally I sort of couldn't stick. I've told this before as well, because when we used to, I mean, first of all, I like animals, and I don't like being cruel to animals. I understand that I'm not like a vegetarian or anything. I understand that we make some sort of mental concessions where it's like we love little fluffy animals, but also factory farming is sort of essential for the food chain that we've built for ourselves. And so there is some sort of understanding on some level that, yeah, you are just essentially using a chicken. You know, like its sentience is almost irrelevant to the concession you've made for existence, right? But, you know, but I never liked it. Having to snap an animal's neck. You know, it's obviously not something you should take pleasure in. But unfortunately, there were some people who were just fucking animals. They were just nutcases, like, worked on this fucking farm. I said, we had this one guy, we literally used to call him Psycho, because his job was you have to slit the gizzard and flick the guts out on a chicken and then hang it up. So he would just talk to himself all day, saying things like, I just like watching the knife go in. And you'd be like, what was that? What was that, mate? What was that? He was like, fucking hell, watch out for him. He was a mad cunt, right? So, and all the rest of them were just like needlessly, sort of took joy almost in it. I was just like, this job's horrible and it doesn't pay enough and I need to get out as soon as possible. So I think I did that and then went back to waitering for a bit. I think I got a job in a nice kitchen. And obviously you go away to university. While I was what was that?
Drug dealer, I'm guessing it's coming up now.
I mean, if you count that as a job.
Does that count as one of your hobbies as well that you were just doing? Well,
I certainly had a hobby like fascination with drugs. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And it's still a great hobby to this day. But no, I mean, so I guess you could count drug deal. I mean, I wasn't very good at it. I didn't make a lot of money. In fact, I gave most of mine away, like, because I would get loved up and just be like, "Hey, mate, I've just given away 60 pills. Like, what have I done?" So there were, and obviously everybody knows the weed with the bin bag story. So I wouldn't count that as a job because it actually fucked me up financially more than I ever made money. More of a status thing, you're the guy who's got the connect. Everybody wants to get to know you. So I worked as a barman. I worked in a fish and chip shop. That job, by the way, depressingly nihilistic. You would think, what could be so bad about that? You used to snap chickens' necks.
I can guess. Do people just get burned all the time in horrific ways?
Mate, you have no right. So
that's what I was guessing. I knew it because people don't know what that fryer is, dude.
Oh, mate, it wasn't even about the fryer. I'd love to be next to the fryer. That's actually the least dangerous thing in there. Okay. So, I used to work for this fish and chip shop, and the guy who ran it was a Welsh nationalist, right? And because I'm not fully recognised by my people, right? As Sam can tell, I don't speak fluent Welsh. Like he fucking hated me. He saw me as a slice. He saw me as a fucking English bastard, and that was that. And so anyway, he gave me all of the shit jobs in this chip shop. And there was this mad fucking job I had where basically I had to come in at 5 a.m. in the morning. I'd have to bring up sacks of potatoes that were as heavy as me up from the cellar. And then what you have to do is you have to put them in this fucking thing called a rumbler, right? And that is just a sideways tumble dryer, basically. And you put the potatoes in and it takes off all the topsoil and the top layer of skin. And then you just go in with a knife. And I had a bathtub of cold water, freezing cold Welsh morning, dark outside. And I had to go in with a potato peeler by hand and pick out all the roots, all the eyes, right? You do that. And then you have to put them in the fucking slicer, the chipper, right? And this is like something out of Indiana fucking Jones, mate. This machine is just blades intersecting, like shing, 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 shing. And you drop potatoes in and... Mate, a potato would get stuck down the sides and the whole thing would be like going... And I've got to get in there. I've got to get in there. Like, mate, like, what next? Fucking tarantulas on my back. Like, so you used to have to do that. So basically, it's a miracle if you don't have a finger off. Then you've got to take the chips that come out the bottom. Do you know what you do next? People don't know about this. Obviously, if you leave chips out, they oxidize, they go brown. Not very nice. People don't like it. It's not very appealing. It doesn't affect the taste or anything. It's just the optics, And so what you have to do is you have to get this chemical. It's like a bleaching agent called Stay White. And what you do is you have to throw this fucking powder into the water and put the chips in, bleach is splashing up in your face. This cunt wouldn't even give me a mask, ironic considering the times we live in now. So I used to accidentally inhale this fucking bleached powder all the time while I was putting it in. Because I used to have to do bins and bins and bins of chips. And so once you inhale that stuff, good luck having any sense of taste or smell for at least 2 days afterwards. So your eyes would be all fucking red and that. Mate, I was making £3 an hour doing that. £3 an hour for that soul-destroying fucking gulag-style fucking life. So, did that. Then doorman, barman, sort of overlapping with each other.
It's easy just come in and go, should have just taken a month off, Rich. Just have a month off. Just get paid 30 grand a month. £3, 30 grand more like, and just have a month off.
So, yeah, doorman, barman, then salesman. Then I worked in a debt collection department for the South Wales Electric Board. And then esports pretty much after that, via a stop at Birmingham Council. So, I don't think that's a lot of jobs for a man in my, years. But I imagine to a lot of, I guess people are starting employment like later and later in life these days.
The problem I've noticed is this, and I suspect this is the case here. Too many people who are Americans, right? I once had an argument with someone in esports who was trying to tell me that his family wasn't middle class. And then, because they don't know what that is in America, obviously. And then and then when I explained to him stuff like, because he was trying to get, like, believe it or not, dude, he was trying to spin it that he was like from a poor background and oppressed. Well, when we got into the details, I was like, okay, we'll go place for place. So what was it like at school? What was it like when it got to the university part, Richard? Yeah, he didn't have to have a job, and he went to an American university. He didn't think he was middle class. He thought he was working class. I said, the key is in the name, daft cunt. You weren't working. How are you fucking able to live without working? Think it through. So what they don't know, unfortunately, is there's a lot of Americans, as far as I can tell, who have access to the internet and computers, and they think they're just a normal guy, but they don't understand. Basically, their parents have insulated them. They essentially do have a type of privilege. Now, I'm not applying it in some fucked up intersectional, like, fucking race war character. I'm just saying they come from a better off background. So unfortunately, they think that's weird. You've had 20 jobs. They don't realize that's just having a different job every 6 months or something, or moving to a different area. That is actually normal life. You go back in time 40 years.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm happy that kids don't have to work jobs like what we had to these days, because trust me, it's like all of that stuff about it builds character. I mean, probably true on some level. Also soul destroying and hated every moment of it. And like, still think back to those days, and it's a
character or else. That's exactly. If you don't make it through that fucking sluice gate, guess what? You're just the detritus that we never hear from. You just be dead in a chip shop somewhere. So it better build character.
And obviously, as well, I'll add, and again, this is just true for everyone from where I'm from. Obviously, I've been a labourer. Obviously, I've been a bricklayer. Obviously, I've done plastering. Used to be a period in the 90s where cunt would just turn up in a van and say, do you want a day's work? And you go, all right, yeah. And you would just go to typically hod carrying, but if you had any skilled labour, you could do that. I used to be a plasterer's assistant, and that was all cash in hand work. So the bottom line is, when you're from like when you're in that lowest economic tier, you just take it where you can. And jobs, they're not careers, they're jobs. It's what you do. People who are a little bit older than me, the generation or two that preceded me, who grew up in the 80s, they'll tell you all about that culture when Britain was just economically crushed and all the mines had closed down. And obviously I caught the tail end of that, and all the industry, all the steel had gone away. People just literally were like, what can I do? I mean, that's the famous thing. I recommend it to anyone if you want to know where me and Duncan grew up, essentially, in the kind of era that we come out of. Because I know we make it sound Dickensian, but go watch Boys from the Black Stuff. That's basically that's like the blueprint, certainly for my life. And, go look at the tragic character of Yozza Hughes. An unemployed alcoholic desperately trying to hold on to his children while carer trying to take them away. I mean, that was another spectre we grew up with, that if you ever fell below the poverty line, people used to come and just take your kids away. People would just come and take you away. And so, that was another imperative for me as a kid. I was told, by my mother, if I don't go and contribute economically, even at 11 or 12, if we end up starving, I'll just get took away one day. Do I want that? So no, you better go get a fucking paper round then. So I'm glad that, kids these days don't know about shit like that. But, we grew up in a time when it was fucking sink or swim, which is why I always get a bit triggered by the privilege argument.
Of course, yeah.
Like, people would psychologically break if they'd had the childhood I had. Hilariously, it's only recently that I've like kind of recontextualized it and realized it's actually not a source of character. It's actually a source of trauma.
For sure.
So, anyway, Chingu asks, now that Paul Macbeth has a 10-year, $10 million contract, and Ricky Wazocki has signed a 4-year, $4 million contract.
This is Football Manager shit from your games, right?
This is disc golf, Duncan.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
What's the next niche sport that you and Sam are looking at to blow up by using your influence? Did you see this, Sam? That creepy Macbeth has got a $10 million 10-year contract?
Well, isn't $10 million too much? Is it really that big that you can have $1 million a year?
I guess so, like, but yeah, they don't really get the viewership, do they? I guess the YouTube videos get big views, but it's like those clickbait ones, like, oh my god, like top 5 putts. Those are the ones with the big views. I don't think the tournaments get a lot of views, but fair play, he has robbed them of 10 mil. Like,
yeah, I mean, listen, I've been loving Dust still on the circuit. He uploaded a highlight video the other day. You got to see it, Sam. You'll love it. He gets so happy when it goes in the bin. He's more happy about that disc going in the bin than he ever was doing esports.
Is he actually legit good, by the way? Is he like beating people in these?
Sam says no. Sam says he can beat you without any practice whatsoever.
Yeah, but that's just Sam. Who he is, mate. I could throw a frisbee, be like, fuck.
Wait a minute. Which way do you mean it, though, Sam? Because I took it.
He's just a short artist.
He's a psychological basket case.
Yes, that's what I thought you meant. I actually thought, as if I'm on the same page, I knew that what you meant was. Not actually beating him at disc golf. You would just psychologically beat him. You would just like essentially say mean things and sort of put him under pressure, and you'd break him, wouldn't you?
If one goes in, he'd be broken. Like,
I've been seeing how hard the fucking game is, mind. Like, there is no. I would actually.
You have to understand. Sam would just go way too far. He'd be doing shit like just whispering in his ear. He used to fuck guys like you in prison, shit like that. You know, like fucking just about to go. You know,
have him holding my pocket to the next hole. Come on, Dust.
Yeah, good old teabag Davies. Like, you know what I mean? But yeah, so listen. Just to answer this question semi-seriously before we go through the rest. I think whenever I see a shit sport, right, like darts or fucking, and sorry, Sam, I know that's sacrilege, but like, or disc golf or something that's new, like, the reason I can always vibe with it is because, like, think about what I do, esports. Esports was at its best pre-mainstream era when it was niche and it was like it had that discoverability element and it was kind of a bit shit and it was new and exciting and people were really, really trying their best to polish it, but it was always going to be a bit amateur. Like, some of my best memories are from absolute garbage events that, looking back, they're cringeworthy as fuck. Or, like, for example, that classic video of the Heroes of Newark finals, where that guy goes, and now we're in Las Vegas, and it zooms out, and they're in a gym with terrible lighting, empty bleachers behind him.
Looks like a fucking, like, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air episode, if you want to see it. That's, like, it's not good.
Yeah. That to me is quintessential esports, and it's why I always vibe. Yeah, the right level of cringe and try hard, but actually the game itself and what the players are trying to do, attain that excellence, and you understand the skill ceiling. It's that, like, melange of fucking all of those conflicting emotions. That what made esports appealing. It was a weird, fucked up, wacky subculture. Now it's just this homogenized, polished entertainment product. It's Disney, and it sucks. So when I see something like disc golf, and it's like just a bunch of weird fucking whacked out hippies playing disc golf, I could probably vibe more with disc golf than I could with esports right now, So
yeah.
So there you go. Lonnie says, have you considered uploading VODs to Pornhub to have a more robust monetization approach? It's actually ridiculous. I know you've gone through the same thing. Obviously, you have a bigger YouTube channel than me, Duncan. What's been going on lately, for those who don't know, and it's one of the reasons why it's taking longer to get VODs out now. I had a talk with a news guy called Tipster on Twitter about it, if you want to see confirmation from someone else invested in the YouTube space, and our boy Keemstar was moaning about it the other day. They've changed all the algorithms and changed the demonetization process. So what happens now is, basically, you upload a VOD, it instantly demonetizes, and the appeal that used to take 1 to 2 days tops now takes 4 to 7 days. And if you make any alterations to thumbnails, to hashtags and descriptions, if you put in timestamps after the fact, any of those things can trigger a demonetization again, even if you've already had it successfully appealed. It's just whack, whatever they're doing right now. Not to mention, if you go and look at the overall discoverability and the overall traffic on channels, and lots of big creators are complaining about this, views are down essentially like a third on what they were last year. And I see a lot of people go, you only got like 20,000 views on that video dying channel. It's like, mate, I'll link you to someone with 1 million subscribers who's getting 20,000 views on their video. The general rule of engagement is, for every 10 subs, you get 1 view. And I don't know why. I don't know why it's changed, but everybody's talking about that. It's happening to everybody. Actually, and it's all sub growth has stagnated as
There's
well.
Another thing, mate, I'm not exaggerating. This is why I know that they throttle it somehow, Richard. Because here's the problem: if I'm just not popular, it'd go the other way, wouldn't it? It would go down. My numbers on both Twitter and YouTube, subscriber numbers, basically just stay the same for like 2 or 3 years now. As in, they go like up 100, down 100 next month. Up 50, down 70. Like, that doesn't make any sense in terms of how humans behave. As I say, either people would unsub and there'd be less people, or it would grow at least small amount. But yeah, I agree. I've noticed the last few years, something's kicked in. Something in the algorithm sort of got us, mate. They figured out who we are.
Yeah. Yeah, and also as well, and Griff's talking about this in the chat now. Griff runs the Clips channel for us. Basically, what they also do passive aggressively, when you appeal, they say, you've been wrong in the past. We demonetized all your videos. Yeah, you overturned them all on appeal. And on my Clips channel, 150 videos, there's like 150 clips there, right? They, overnight, one night, they were all green and then they were all yellow. And Griff had to go through and manually reappeal them. And arbitrarily, 20% of them didn't get remonetized. And then they have the nerve to bring up that warning. You don't really know what's monetizable and what isn't. Well, no, who the fuck does? No one who works at YouTube. So yeah, honestly, like, no joke, there are better video platforms out there. Unfortunately, it's just YouTube gets the bulk of the advertising. Yes. That's just where you're at. And that's why, you know, until there's a viable alternative, this is where we're at. You know, I've tried with Rumble a bit. I've put content on over there. I think there's outside of the big few that are over there. Again, you've got discoverability issues because, like any platform that doesn't curate, there's a flood of shit and you're in it. You're part of that shit. You're part of that deluge, and you've got to hope you stand out. You're a turd that pokes out from the effluvium. But, you know, no, it just doesn't work like that by and large. So, yeah. Reykjavik on Steam. What snacks do you recommend to go along with viewing BTN? What's your favourite snack at the moment, Duncan?
Ooh, let me think. What would I pick for that? Well, actually, one thing, just because it's a weird thing, I think I might even complained about in the past, so I won't make it a big thing. One thing that they're very weird about in the Netherlands for some reason is the flavours of crisps is just fucking shit. Their favourite flavours, unironically, are ready salted and paprika flavour. Right? If I like crisps, I never
vibed with paprika crisps.
I like a lot of flavour, you know. I like a strong, like a fucking meat flavour or like pickle or something. Onion, yeah, or even tomato ketchup or something. You know, so I want something strong more. I want it to be like almost like overwhelming with the flavour. So unfortunately, they tend to go the very sort of shit route. So what I like to do is I'd normally go to those shops that sell like American crisps, and then you just get some of those ones like fucking Hares or something. The ones that like have a strong flavour to them. So I would say some like barbecue crisps or something pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think what I've been snacking on, because obviously it's Christmas. So, you know, packed on all the pounds again that I lost. I don't know, man. Like, it's kind of... I'll tell you what I ate a lot of over Christmas. Those honey roasted cashews.
Oh, nuts. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't want to say that because I knew immediately you'd be like, well, yeah, eat my esports nuts.
I know.
Start doing that.
Jake Lucky probably in there. Richard Lewis can suck on my salty nuts. Literally doing a fucking South Park chef joke from about 15 years ago. But then again, that'd be considered quality material for him.
But yeah, so I've been doing that. I've been eating them. Think they're good. I like them. You know, I'm again, because I'm a barfly. You know, the really unhygienic communal bowl of nuts on the end of a fucking dive bar.
Did you see this?
Pissy fingers in them, you know.
That's just reminded me of that Jake Lucky thing of a mad tweet the other day. What? Like, there was a tweet that Adam Fitch himself, like, sort of like agreed with and amplified as a way to make fun of, where some random guy, I assume from like Valorant, it must be the crossover game, it's Valorant or COD, some random moron goes like to Adam Fitch of all people, like, you should make a show where it's you and Jake Lucky, which is like, what do you know of Adam Fitch's career that you in any way think that cast pairing makes sense? It makes no sense. If you don't know, Adam Fitch is actually one of the few people, and him and George are the only ones of the new generation who are actually more in our vein. If anything, that's my actual plan. I'm going to back George to do exactly, he's going to be in the same space as Jake Lucky, but just be a better version. And he's even better at doing that stupid influencer stuff, as I pointed out on the other episode. He's even actually better at that.
And to be fair, when you roasted him on, it was either the last
before it.
he just said that's hilarious. So
fair play. There you go.
Yeah, so
who knew there was an alternative response?
He hasn't stopped doing it, mate. You know,
of course,
yeah.
He's a fuckboy, but whatever.
Right, okay. BP420, welcome back. Been missing you. BP420, gentlemen, what should we do with the drunken sailor early in the morning, especially early in the morning? Obviously, a classic sea shanty there, which got strangely popular a few months ago. What I used to do with my grandfather, who was a sailor and occasionally drunk, when he got drunk, was he would fall asleep in his chair after reliving the horror of having served in World War II. And I would get a blanket and I would put it round him and I'd kiss him on the forehead and let him sleep it off. That's what I would do. But that is a drunken sailor I am related to. So maybe not appropriate. For a sailor you're not related to, maybe kiss them on the lips. Or the tip of the penis. Otarian asks, which Orpa has more impressive flicks? Kenny S's flicks to the head when he's motivated.
Here we go. Where's this going? Come on.
Or Henny's flicks to his foot whenever anything positive is happening in his career.
There you go.
Not bad, Otarian. Not bad.
That was pretty well said. That was almost Carve-esque.
Yeah, almost. We're getting there. No one's topped Carve yet, but good one. Jerky's Mini and the Legend. If you were into a Colosseum to fight a gladiator, which of your fellow members of talent would you choose to help fight it? Let me see. It's Semler now. It wouldn't have been a couple of years ago. But Semler's on that fucking jiu-jitsu working out shit, isn't he? So he's pretty stocky.
To be fair, I hope most people would pick me. Did you see what I just did with Semler? I was like, Mr. President, get down! And I just took the fucking all the bullets myself.
Yeah.
No one even knows that he was involved in the story. Half of them.
It's just that. It was just on stream the next day, shit-eating grin. Yeah. You know.
I know, it's mental, isn't it?
Classic. Yeah, definitely Semler, I think.
If people don't know, Semler actually, here's the joke. You know, people do that thing like, you just are like that, this, that, the other. Like, what people don't know is Semler actually is what he presents himself as. He's like a guy who's like really fit now, does jiu-jitsu, who's into hunting, all that, like fucking reads loads of books. Like, he actually is like a Renaissance man. So yeah, he would be a mega picture take. Also, you know, he can go through some shit unlike a lot of the others.
Indeed. Thursock, last question. Are there any scenarios you see where this FaZe team eclipses Na'Vi to become the #1 team in the world?
Look, it's not impossible. Like, they have some good pieces. I think the problem with that one is, like, we're all at the moment, and we're probably going to discuss this in future shows, I'm no doubt, we're all kind of still trapped in Na'Vi's moment, aren't we? Like, right now, it's like I said before about the whole era discussion. The reason the era discussion is pointless is because right now it feels impossible that Na'Vi doesn't win loads of more tournaments and come top 2 and make finals. But maybe they don't. That is how the cruel game of esports works. So the key thing is, in my opinion, it's not just how good is FaZe. I think Na'Vi probably has to get worse and sort of meet them in the middle, and then maybe FaZe could be #1, you know. I don't think they can be like a pure #1 with this 5-man lineup, though. It doesn't feel quite good enough yet.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I won't rule anything out. You know, you have to believe at some point, unless we're about to witness something really special, you have to believe at some point Na'Vi's going to fall off, even if it's a temporary aberration or a blip. That happens to all of the great teams. That happens to all of the teams, you know. So it's about who can seize that moment when it happens. And will it be FaZe? I would argue that there are better contenders to do that. I have to believe Vitality are going to be that contender. You know, I have to believe Gambit are going to learn some lessons from this LAN experience they've now accrued and are going to get back to the drawing board and want to beat their old arch enemies. So who knows? I think there's too many twists and turns this year. It's a really exciting year in terms of the top 5 teams. So is there a world? I mean, there definitely is. But here's the thing. The first scenario is Na'Vi have to fall off. That's likely at some point. Who knows when? Right. Then all the other teams have to fail to make up the ground. Now you're getting into really wild fucking territory because you're relying on the failures of about 4 or 5 different variables. And then on top of that, you're now relying on FaZe getting their shit together and becoming the best team in the world, which is even more unlikely than the things we've just said. And they all have to happen sequentially. So it's highly unlikely, but fuck, man. I mean, you know, if you'd have told me perennial failures Na'Vi after they fucked up having an era the first time after winning Katowice in that last LAN event and then failed to go on a tear, if you'd have told me they would be this good now, here and now, after adding an unknown rookie to the roster, I said probably not. That probably can't happen. So occasionally you do exist in interesting timelines. Right, that's all of you with questions. So, as said, I am about to jump across onto It's Server Time with Maui, Snake, and Note. We're going to be going over all the Rostermania stuff and some different takes. I'll be a guest there, so I won't be hosting. Maybe I'll go crazy. Maybe I'll go psycho on someone else's stream and get it cancelled. I'll live my inner Duncan. It'll be great. But anyway, all that remains to be said over here on this stream before we go and raid that, so stick around. Is, of course, shout out to the sponsors. NordVPN. Go to nordvpn.com/RLS for 74% off what I consider to be the best VPN on the market. They don't save your data. It's 2 clicks of a button. They're really good, and we've been working with them for a long time now. And, of course, SteelSeries, who do great hardware. The new Prime range is lights out. If you're esports oriented and you want to level up your game, you can go to the SteelSeries store, type in my name, Richard Lewis, all one word, no space, and get 10% off anything in the store. So if you've got a bit of money lying around over Christmas, probably a good place to spend it, because you want to support our sponsors because they support us. And obviously our patrons, you heard some of their names there. Our $100 patrons: Benakagi, Carve, Cathal, Cred, who was newly added, by the way. Got to say, did DM me. Apparently he's been on for a few weeks now and his name wasn't coming up, so apologies about that, Cred, mate. I did get your DM. J-Dubs, Jerky's Minion, Jeremy Dole, Marcus Kjumpar, Michael, Tobias Bernasconi, Will the Weed Wrangler, and our $50 patrons: Adam Ock, Alex C, A Rama, BP420, Bacon, Canapacito, CMAC1991, Detlef Insomniac, Echo, Fursock, Gerhan Kaya, Frankito, Judas, Miss Alcoholic, Nolan, Otarian, Reykjavik on Steam, Saad Sawar, Shine, Satan, Bitcoin Cash Podcast, Tim Frost, Lonnie, Watch Doge, Zumba, and Zarathenia. That was By the Numbers. We'll see you sometime next week, and until then, take care of yourself.